Between the front paws of the Great Sphinx stands a granite slab weighing 15 tons. It was put there around 1401 BC by an Egyptian prince who had just finished digging the Sphinx out of the sand. 3,400 years ago, the Sphinx already needed rescuing. Every guidebook on Earth will tell you who built it, the pharaoh Khafre, 4,500 years ago. But the Sphinx has never said so. Not one inscription anywhere from any era names the person who carved it. And the body of the statue itself carries marks that some scientists say record a different age entirely. So how old is the Sphinx really? In 1991, a geologist named Robert Schoch, Boston University doctorate from Yale, stood up at the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America and presented an analysis of the weathering on the Sphinx and the walls of the pit it stands in. The geologists in the room found the data credible. Egyptologists declared war on it. That fight is now 35 years old, and it has never been settled, because both sides are holding evidence the other one can't fully explain. Giza, 1817. A Genoese sea captain turned treasure hunter named Giovanni Battista Caviglia has a small army of workmen shoveling sand from between the Sphinx's paws. The statue is buried to its neck, as it has been on and off for most of recorded history. What his men uncover is that 15-ton granite slab, the Dream Stele. On it, the prince who became Thutmose IV explains why he cleared the sand. The Sphinx came to him in a dream and promised him the throne of Egypt in exchange. And on line 13, the diggers find something electrifying. A royal name, or part of one. 3 letters worth of a syllable, Khaf. Scholars complete it as Khafre, the pharaoh who built the second pyramid right behind the Sphinx. Case closed. The syllable sat inside no royal cartouche. The line is so damaged that what the sentence actually said about Khafre, builder, restorer, neighbor, is unrecoverable. And then the flake of stone carrying the symbol crumbled away entirely. It no longer exists. We know it was there only because someone copied it down first. That vanished symbol is the closest thing to a signature the Sphinx has ever produced. The rest of the case is real but circumstantial. The Sphinx sits beside Khafre's causeway. His valley temple next door held statues of his face, one of the finest ever carved. The Sphinx's temple was built from blocks cut out of the very pit the Sphinx sits in. Khafre is the obvious answer. Obvious and unsigned. Giza, 1990. An American writer named John Anthony West arrives at the Sphinx with an unusual companion for an Egypt tour. Not an Egyptologist, a geologist. Because West wants an answer from the only witness that had been standing in that pit the entire time. The stone. Robert Schoch climbs down into the Sphinx enclosure, the open pit the statue was carved out of, and starts reading the walls. Weathering to a geologist is handwriting. Wind-driven sand cuts one way, sharp-edged, horizontal, sandblasted. Rain writes differently. It pours over an edge and eats downward, carving vertical channels, rounding the rock into a rolling, rippled profile. The enclosure walls are covered in deep vertical fissures, and that unmistakable rolling profile. Schoch's reading: this is not wind. This is rainfall. Heavy, sustained, centuries of it. Giza is one of the driest places on the planet, and it has been since before the pharaohs. But the Sahara wasn't always desert. Rewind past roughly 5,000 years ago, and North Africa was green. Grasslands, lakes, monsoon rains. Climate scientists call it the African humid period. and its heavy rains were already dying out before Khafre was born. If the deep erosion on those walls was written by rain, the pit was already open to the sky while the Sahara was still wet. Thousands of years before Egypt had a king. Schoch went further. With geophysicist Thomas de Becky, he ran seismic lines across the enclosure floor and measured how deeply the bedrock had weathered below the surface, in front of the statue and along its sides, roughly 6 to 8 feet deep. Behind the ramp, about half that. Same rock, same pit, one reading. Parts of this enclosure had been exposed for far longer than others. His estimate for the first carving, 7,000 years ago at minimum. In later work, he pushed it back to the end of the last ice age. For decades, the standard reply was simple. Impossible. No one on Earth could organize monument building that early. Then Göbekli Tepe came out of a hilltop in Turkey, carved megalithic pillars 11,500 years old. Nobody argues about the date. The word impossible quietly left the conversation. February 1992, Chicago. The American Association for the Advancement of Science put Schoch on a stage opposite Mark Lehner, the archaeologist who has mapped the Sphinx stone by stone for years. Lerner's counterpunch is one sentence long. If an older civilization carved the Sphinx, where is the rest of their world? It's a devastating question. Civilizations leave garbage. Pottery, tools, hearths, graves. Egypt's sands preserve everything. Around the Sphinx, archaeologists have found the bakeries that fed Khafre's workers, their barracks, their fish bones. From Schoch's older Sphinx builders, not one potsherd, ever. And the geology has answers of its own. Gauri, a geologist who spent years studying the Sphinx's stone conversation, points at salt. The limestone is soaked nightly by dew and humidity. Salts inside the rock dissolve, crystallize, and pry the surface apart, flake by flake. Haloclasty. It rounds edges and opens fissures. And it can mimic centuries of rain damage on a fast clock. No wet Sahara required. Other geologists note the enclosure's limestone comes in alternating hard and soft layers. The soft bands crumble, the hard bands hold, and you get a rolling profile out of the ordinary desert weathering. Then there's the third position, the inconvenient middle. Colin Reeder, a British engineer and geologist, walked the plateau expecting to debunk the whole thing. He came back agreeing the erosion is rain runoff, but noticed the quarries Khufu dug upslope would have cut off the water's path to the enclosure. His conclusion? The Sphinx is older than Khafre, but only by centuries, early dynastic, still Egyptian. And in 2023, the argument gained a suspect nobody had taken seriously since 1981. Nature itself. Physicists at New York University built a miniature Giza in a water flume, a mold of clay with a hard lump buried inside, and let fluid flow over it the way desert winds flows over bedrock. The mound eroded into a reclining lion, head, back, paws, a yardang, a natural wind-carved landform. The suggestion, first made by geologist Farouk El-Baz, the desert sculpted the rough draft and the Egyptian saw a sleeping god in the rock and finished the job. Which would explain something everyone on every side agrees on, but no one can prove. The head is too small for the body, wildly out of proportion. The one thing ancient Egyptian sculptors never got wrong. Unless the body was already there, and the head was recarved from something older and larger. So here is where the evidence actually stands, stripped of television. The case for Khafre is real. The causeway, the temples, the quarry logistics, the worker settlements, the total archaeological silence from any earlier builder. But it is thinner than the textbooks admit. No inscription, no contemporary record, a signature syllable that fell off the stele 2 centuries ago. And Egypt itself muddies the waters. A slab found at Giza in 1858, the inventory stele, flatly describes Khufu, Khafre's father, ordering repairs to a sphinx that already existed. Egyptologists dismiss it as a pious forgery written 2,000 years later. They're probably right. But notice what that means. Even the ancient Egyptians told stories about the Sphinx being older than the pyramids. The rain camp has the fissures, the seismic data, and a green Sahara with thousands of years of unclaimed time. The Orthodox camp has every other piece of physical evidence ever pulled out of the Giza plateau. And the wind camp says both sides are arguing over a statue the desert started carving before humans touched it at all. Stone doesn't lie, but it turns out stone is very hard to cross-examine. So, how old is the Sphinx, really? Almost certainly, the monument as we know it belongs to Khafre's Egypt, 4,500 years ago. That's where the weight of evidence sits. But the marks on that enclosure wall have never been fully explained away. The head is still the wrong size, and the only written signature crumbled to dust before anyone could photograph it. The oldest sculpture on Earth is either exactly as old as advertised, or it's the last surviving witness to a world we've completely forgotten. Either answer should keep you up at night. And the Egyptians understood something we forget. Whoever controls the monument controls its memory. They didn't just build history, they edited it. One queen ruled Egypt as pharaoh, and they spent 20 years chiseling her name off every wall in the country. That story is already on the channel. The Sphinx kept its secret. Not everyone got to keep theirs. If you want the buried side of Egypt, the erased names, the missing bodies, the monuments that don't add up, subscribe. We dig where the textbook stops.